The air smelled of damp leaves and wood smoke as Liam Carter trudged down the gravel path toward home, his sneakers scuffing against the stones. At 10 years old, Liam was small for his age, with a mop of sandy hair that always seemed to fall into his hazel eyes no matter how many times he pushed it back. His backpack, slung over one shoulder, bounced lightly with each step, stuffed with library books about pirates and far-off lands, stories that felt more like home than the new house his family had moved into 3 months ago. Rural Virginia was different from the bustling Ohio suburb they'd left behind. Here the Blue Ridge Mountains loomed in the distance, their peaks soft and hazy, and the nights were so quiet Liam could hear his own heartbeat. But quiet wasn't always comforting. It made him feel small, like he was a speck in a world too big to notice him. Liam's new school wasn't much better. The kids weren't mean, not really, but they already had their groups, their inside jokes, their ways of talking that Liam couldn't quite catch on to. He'd sit at the edge of the lunch table, picking at his sandwich, listening to the chatter without joining in. His teacher, Mrs. Hargrove, called him thoughtful, which Liam figured was a nice way of saying he didn't talk much. He didn't mind too much. He had his books, his imagination, and his family. But sometimes, when the house was still, and his younger sister Ava was busy with her sketchbooks, Liam felt a tug of loneliness, like a knot in his chest he couldn't untie. That afternoon, the October sky was heavy with clouds, promising rain. Liam's mom, Sarah, had promised to pick him up after school, but she texted to say she was running late, dropping off donations at the Blue Ridge Animal Shelter. "Meet me there," the message read. Liam didn't mind the walk. It was only a mile, and the shelter was tucked just off Willow Creek Road, a narrow lane lined with pines and wildflowers gone to seed. He'd been there once before when they'd first moved, to drop off a bag of old towels. The place had stuck in his mind, not because of the building, a low brick structure with a faded sign, but because of the sounds, barks, whines, and the soft shuffle of paws against concrete. It was like the animals were calling out, hoping someone would answer. As Liam reached the shelter's gravel lot, he spotted his mum's green SUV parked near the entrance. The front door was propped open, and a volunteer in a yellow apron was sweeping leaves from the steps. Inside, the air was warm, tinged with the smell of kibble and disinfectant. The welcome desk was cluttered with flyers about adoption events, and a jar labeled donation pennies. Behind it, a hallway stretched out, lined with metal kennel doors. The barking hit Liam like a wave, some dogs pressing their noses to the gates, tails wagging, others pacing or lying still. It was a mix of hope and waiting, and Liam felt it settle into his bones. "Mom?" he called softly, stepping past the desk. Sarah's voice drifted from the back, where she was handing a stack of blankets to a woman with grey braids and a name tag reading Clara. Liam's mom was tall, with the same sandy hair as her son, though hers was pulled into a messy bun. She smiled when she saw him. "Hey, kiddo, almost done. Want to wait in the car?" Liam shook his head. "Can I look around?" He wasn't sure why he asked. Maybe it was the pull of the place, the way the dog's eyes seemed to follow him, like they knew something he didn't. Clara glanced at Sarah, who nodded. "Just don't stick your fingers through the bars, okay?" Clara said with a kind but firm tone. "Some of them are nervous." Liam wandered down the hallway, his sneakers squeaking on the linoleum. The kennels were small but clean, each with a water bowl, a bed, and a card taped to the door listing the dog's name, age, and notes. Buddy, 2 years, loves fetch. Luna, 5 years, shy but sweet. Most dogs perked up as he passed, some jumping, others giving soft whines. Liam stopped to read each card, imagining the dogs in his backyard, chasing bulls or curling up by the fireplace. He had Sunny at home, their 6-year-old golden retriever, who greeted him every day with a wagging tail and a slobbery grin. Sunny made everything better, but Liam wondered what it would be like to give another dog a chance to feel that way. At the end of the hall, one kennel was quieter than the rest. No barking, no movement. Liam peered inside, his breath catching. A Labrador retriever puppy sat in the far corner, his golden fur dull and matted, ribs faintly visible under his sides. He was maybe 6 months old, small for a lab, with a thin scar tracing his front leg from shoulder to elbow. His head was low, ears twitching, but he didn't look up. The card on the door read, "Rusty, 6mo, fearful, not good with people, unadoptable." The word unadoptable was written in red marker, bold and final. Liam's stomach twisted. He didn't know what it meant exactly, but he knew it wasn't good. He stood there watching Rusty's stillness, the way his brown eyes stared at the wall like they'd seen too much. Liam had never seen a dog so quiet, so closed off. Sonny would have been at the gate by now, tail thumping, ready to play. But Rusty was different. He wasn't angry or loud. He was just gone, like he'd given up on hoping. Liam didn't know why, but he felt a pang in his chest, sharp and warm. Maybe it was because he knew what it was like to feel out of place, to wonder if anyone would notice you. Or maybe it was something deeper, something he couldn't name yet. Clara's voice broke his thoughts. "That one's a tough case, hun. Been here a month, found by the creek, half-starved. Doesn't let anyone near him." She sighed, her face soft but tired. "We're trying, but—" Liam nodded, his eyes still on Rusty. He didn't know what to say, but he knew he didn't want to leave. Not yet. Liam's breath fogged the air in the dimly lit hallway of the Blue Ridge Animal Shelter, his gaze fixed on the Labrador Retriever puppy curled in the corner of the kennel. Rusty's golden fur was patchy, clinging to his thin frame, and the scar on his leg gleamed faintly under the fluorescent light. The red word "unadoptable" on his kennel card seemed to pulse, like a warning sign Liam couldn't ignore. He didn't know what made a dog unadoptable, but the idea of it sat heavy in his chest like a stone he couldn't swallow. Rusty wasn't barking or pacing like the other dogs. He just sat there, his brown eyes locked on the wall, as if the world had stopped mattering to him. Clara, the volunteer with the grey braids, stood a few steps behind Liam, her broom resting against the wall. "He's not mean," she said, her voice low like she was sharing a secret. "Just scared. Found him by the creek, all alone, skin and bones. Might have been dumped, or maybe he got lost. Either way, he doesn't trust folks. Won't eat if anyone's watching, won't come near the gate." She shook her head, her eyes softening. "We've tried, but some dogs take longer to come around." Liam nodded, though he wasn't sure he understood. He'd never met a dog like Rusty. At home, Sonny, their golden retriever, was all wags and warmth, bounding to the door the second Liam's key turned in the lock. Sonny trusted everyone, delivery guys, neighbors, even the squirrel that teased him from the fence. But Rusty looked like he'd built a wall around himself, one Liam didn't know how to climb. Still, something about those eyes, dull but deep like they held stories no one had bothered to hear, made Liam want to stay. "Can I go in?" Liam asked, his voice barely above a whisper. He wasn't sure why he said it. The words just slipped out like they'd been waiting for the chance. Clara blinked, her eyebrows lifting. "In the kennel, with him?" She glanced at Rusty, then back at Liam, her mouth tightening. "He's not aggressive, but he's skittish. He'll probably just ignore you, and it's not exactly comfy in there. Cold floor, you know." "That's okay," Liam said, his hands fidgeting with the straps of his backpack. "I just want to sit with him. I won't do anything." Clara studied him for a moment, her eyes searching his face like she was trying to figure out if he was serious. Then she gave a small nod. "All right. But slow movements, okay? No reaching for him. And if he looks upset, ears back, tail tucked, you come out. Deal?" "Deal," Liam said, his heart thudding a little faster. He wasn't trying to be brave or prove anything. He just felt like Rusty needed someone to sit there, even if it didn't make sense. Clara unlocked the kennel door, the metal creaking as it swung open. Liam stepped inside, careful not to let his sneakers squeak too loudly. The concrete was chilly through his jeans as he sat cross-legged, leaving plenty of space between him and Rusty. The puppy didn't move, didn't even glance his way. But his ears twitched, like he was listening to every sound Liam made. Liam set his backpack down gently and leaned against the wall, the cold seeping into his back. The kennel smelled of straw and metal, and the faint hum of the shelter's heater buzzed in the background. For a minute, Liam just sat, watching Rusty's shallow breaths, the way his ribs rose and fell under his matted fur. He didn't know what to do next, but he remembered how he'd talked to Sonny sometimes, telling him about school or the comics he'd read. Maybe Rusty would like that, or maybe he wouldn't care. Either way, Liam figured it was worth a try. "Hey, Rusty," he said softly, his voice barely carrying across the kennel. "I'm Liam. I just moved here. It's kind of weird, you know. New school, new house. I don't really know anyone yet." He paused, waiting for a reaction, but Rusty stayed still, his eyes fixed on the wall. Liam kept going, his words tumbling out like they'd been bottled up too long. "Back in Ohio, I had this friend, Jake. We used to build forts in his backyard. Here, it's just quiet. My sister, Ava, she's 7. She draws all the time. Dragons, mostly. Says they're gonna fly her to a castle someday." Liam's voice was steady, calm, like he was reading one of his adventure books aloud. He wasn't sure if Rusty was listening, but it felt right to keep talking, to fill the silence with something soft. He reached into his backpack and pulled out a plastic baggie with half an apple slice, his after-school snack. "You like apples?" he asked, holding it up so Rusty could see. "Sonny goes crazy for 'em. I mean, not that you're like Sonny, but—" He trailed off, feeling a little silly. Slowly he placed the apple slice on the floor halfway between them, then leaned back again. Rusty's ears flicked, and for the first time his head turned, just a fraction, enough for one eye to meet. Liam's. It wasn't a stare of trust or curiosity, but it wasn't fear either. It was like Rusty was sizing him up, deciding if Liam was worth noticing. Then, just as quickly, he looked away, back to the wall. Liam's heart gave a small leap. It wasn't much, but it was something. A crack in Rusty's invisible wall. "Liam?" His mum's voice echoed from the hallway. "You okay in there?" "Yeah, Mum," Liam called back, keeping his voice low so he wouldn't startle Rusty. "I'm fine." Clara peeked in, her expression a mix of surprise and amusement. "You're a patient one, aren't you?" she said. "Most kids would have given up by now." Liam shrugged, his cheeks warming. "He's not bothering me. I think he's lonely." Clara's smile softened and she nodded. "Maybe he is. You're welcome to come back, you know. We're here every day." Liam looked at Rusty, still as a statue, and felt that tug in his chest again. He didn't know why, but he knew he'd be back. Rusty might not trust him yet, but Liam wasn't ready to give up on him either. Liam couldn't stop thinking about Rusty. All evening, as he sat at the kitchen table picking at his meatloaf, his mind drifted back to the Blue Ridge Animal Shelter, to the quiet Labrador Retriever puppy with the scarred leg and the Unadoptable label. He barely heard his sister Ava chattering about her latest dragon drawing or his dad Mark, asking how school was. The image of Rusty's brown eyes, wary but watching, stuck with him like a page he couldn't turn. He didn't know why the puppy felt so important, but he knew he had to go back. "Liam, you're awfully quiet," his mum Sarah said, setting a glass of milk in front of him. Her eyes, the same hazel as his, narrowed with concern. "Everything okay?" He nodded, poking at a green bean. "Just thinking about the shelter. There's this dog, Rusty. He's really scared. They say he doesn't like people." Ava looked up, her fork halfway to her mouth. "Her dog that doesn't like people? That's weird. Sonny loves everybody." "Sonny's different," Liam said, a little defensively. "Rusty's... I don't know. He's just alone." Sarah tilted her head, studying him. "Sounds like... He got to you. You want to visit him again?" Liam's heart lifted. "Can I? Clara said I could come back." His mom smiled, exchanging a glance with Mark, who raised an eyebrow but didn't object. "We'll figure it out," she said. "Maybe tomorrow after school." The next afternoon, Liam was back at the shelter, his backpack slung over one shoulder, and a new apple slice tucked in a baggie. The hallway was just as noisy as before, filled with barks and the clatter of water bowls, but Liam's focus was singular. He headed straight for Rusty's kennel, his sneakers squeaking on the linoleum. Rusty was in the same spot, curled in the corner, his golden fur catching the light like a faded blanket. He didn't look up, but his ears twitched as Liam approached, a sign he knew someone was there. "Hey, Rusty," Liam said softly, kneeling outside the gate. "It's me again, Liam." He waited, hoping for a glance, but Rusty stayed still, his gaze fixed on the wall. Liam didn't mind. He'd expected this. Clara was at the welcome desk, sorting flyers, and when she saw Liam, she gave a warm nod. Back already? You're dedicated. Can I sit with him again? Liam asked, his voice steady but eager. Clara hesitated, then grabbed the kennel key. Same rules, okay? Slow and steady. He's been eating a little more, but he's still jumpy. The kennel door creaked open, and Liam stepped inside, settling cross-legged on the cold concrete. He left plenty of space between him and Rusty, just like before, and placed his backpack beside him. The puppy's ears flicked, but he didn't move, his body tense, like he was bracing for something to go wrong. Liam took a deep breath, letting the shelter's sounds, barks, footsteps, the hum of a vacuum fade into the background. He wanted Rusty to feel safe, even if it was just for a moment. I had a math test today, Liam started, his voice low and even, like he was telling a bedtime story. It was awful. Fractions are the worst. Ava says she likes them, but she's 7, so she's probably lying. He smiled to himself, glancing at Rusty, who hadn't budged. Anyway, I brought you something. He pulled out the apple slice, its edges slightly browned but still crisp, and set it on the floor halfway between them. Sonny stole half of it this morning, but I saved this for you. Rusty's nose twitched, the tiniest movement, but his eyes stayed on the wall. Liam leaned back, resting his hands on his knees. He didn't push, didn't expect anything. He just kept talking, letting his words fill the space like a gentle stream. Back in Ohio, I had this treehouse. Not a real one, just some boards. Jake's dad nailed to a tree. We'd pretend we were pirates sailing to islands with treasure. I miss that sometimes. Virginia's nice, but it's different. For the next half hour, Liam sat there sharing bits of his day. How the school bus smelled like old bananas. How Ava had drawn a dragon with 6 wings. How he'd found a cool rock by the creek that looked like a turtle. Rusty didn't move, but Liam noticed his breathing slow, his ribs rising and falling a little less sharply. It wasn't much, but it felt like progress, like the air in the kennel was a fraction less heavy. The next day Liam was back, and the day after that. His mom started calling it Liam's shelter routine, dropping him off after school while she ran errands. Each visit was the same. Liam would sit in the kennel, talk about his day, and leave an apple slice or a cracker on the floor. Rusty never took the food while Liam was there, but Clara mentioned she'd find the scraps gone later, which made Liam's chest glow with quiet pride. He imagined Rusty waiting until the kennel was empty, then creeping forward to nibble the offering like a secret they shared. By the 10th day, Liam was running out of stories. He'd told Rusty about his favorite book, The Island of Lost Ships, about the time he'd fallen off his bike and chipped a tooth, about Ava's obsession with glitter pens. So he started making things up, spinning tales of pirates and dragons, of a dog named Rusty, who sailed the seas with a boy named Liam. You'd be the best first mate, Liam said, grinning. You'd sniff out treasure from a mile away. That day, something changed. Liam was halfway through a story about a dragon who hoarded apples when he heard a soft shuffle. He froze, his words trailing off. Rusty had turned his head, just slightly, one brown eye locking onto Liam's. It wasn't a long look, maybe a second, but it was enough to make Liam's heart skip. Then Rusty's gaze dropped to the apple slice on the floor. Slowly, so slowly, Liam barely believed it was happening. Rusty uncurled his body and inched forward, his belly brushing the concrete. He sniffed the apple, hesitated, then took it in his mouth and retreated to his corner. He didn't eat it, just held it, his eyes flicking back to Liam. Liam didn't move, didn't speak. He just sat there, a smile spreading across his face, like sunrise. It wasn't trust, not yet, but it was a start. A tiny crack in Rusty's wall, letting a sliver of light through. Liam woke up the next morning with a lightness in his chest, like a balloon tethered just above his heart. The memory of Rusty taking the apple slice replayed in his mind. Those cautious, creeping steps, the quick snatch, the way the Labrador Retriever puppy had looked at him just for a moment before retreating. It wasn't much, but to Liam, it felt like the first page of a new adventure, one he was determined to keep writing. He stuffed an extra apple slice into his backpack before school, already counting the hours until he could return to the Blue Ridge Animal Shelter. At school, Liam was quieter than usual, his thoughts drifting to Rusty even as Mrs. Hargrove droned on about ecosystems. He doodled a dog with a scarred leg in the margin of his notebook, imagining Rusty running through a field, tail wagging like Sonny's. The idea seemed far off, but Liam couldn't shake the feeling that Rusty wasn't as unadoptable as the red label claimed. He just needed time, and Liam was willing to give it. After the final bell, Sarah was waiting in the SUV, Ava in the back seat sketching a dragon with a spiky tail. "Shelter again?" Sarah asked, catching Liam's eager nod in the rearview mirror. "How you gonna wear out those kennel floors, kiddo?" "I just want to see Rusty," Liam said, clutching his backpack. "He took the apple yesterday. I think he's starting to like me." Ava looked up, her glitter pen pausing. "He ate your apple? That's so cool. Is he going to be our dog?" Liam hesitated, the question catching him off guard. He hadn't thought that far ahead. He just knew he wanted to help Rusty, to see those wary eyes soften, maybe even see him wag his tail. "Maybe," he said finally, "if he wants to." "The shelter," Clara greeted Liam with a grin, her grey braids tied back with a red scrunchie. "Our regular's back," she teased, unlocking Rusty's kennel. "He's been a little less jumpy since you started coming. Still won't let me near him, but he's eating more." Liam's heart swelled as he stepped inside, settling cross-legged on the concrete. Rusty was in his usual corner, his golden fur a shade less dull, though his ribs still showed. His ears flicked at Liam's arrival, but he didn't turn, his gaze fixed on the wall like a shield. Liam didn't mind. He was learning Rusty's rhythm, the way the puppy needed space and quiet to feel safe. "Hey, Rusty," Liam said, his voice soft as a whisper. "School was boring today. We had to draw food chains and I put a dog at the top like you. Bet you'd chase all the rabbits." He smiled, pulling out 2 apple slices this time, one for now, one for later. He placed the first slice on the floor halfway between them and leaned back. "I told Ava about you. She wants to meet you, but I said you're not ready for glitter pens yet." Liam kept talking, weaving stories about pirate ships and dragons, about a dog named Rusty who could sniff out hidden caves. He didn't expect a response, but he noticed small changes, Rusty's ears tilting toward him, his breathing slowing, his tail no longer tucked so tightly against his body. Each day Liam returned, his visit stretching into a second week. He'd sit for 30 minutes, sometimes an hour, sharing snacks and stories, never pushing Rusty to move closer. The shelter staff started to notice. "You've got a gift," Clara said one afternoon, watching from the doorway. "Most folks would have given up by now." Liam shrugged, his cheeks warming. "He's not mean. He's just figuring things out." By the 12th day, Liam was running low on pirate tales, so he started reading aloud from a library book, The Secret of Skull Island. His voice was steady, rising and falling with the story's twists. A shipwreck, a hidden map, a storm at sea. Rusty's ears perked, and for the first time, he shifted his body, turning slightly to face Liam. It was subtle, but Liam's pulse quickened. He kept reading, careful not to look directly at Rusty, not wanting to break the moment. When he finished a chapter, Liam set the book down and placed the apple slice on the floor. "This one's fresh," he said, grinning. "Ava tried to steal it, but I was faster." He leaned back, expecting Rusty to wait, like always, until he left. But then he heard it, a soft scrape of paws on concrete. Liam held his breath, his eyes flicking to Rusty. The puppy was moving, inching forward on his belly, his nose low, like he was sneaking through tall grass. He stopped at the apple slice, sniffed it, and then, with a quick dart of his tongue, took it into his mouth. Instead of retreating, he stayed there, chewing slowly, his eyes meeting Liam's for a heartbeat before dropping to the floor. Liam's smile was so wide it hurt. He didn't cheer or move, just sat there, letting the moment settle. Rusty finished the apple and shuffled back to his corner, but he didn't curl up as tightly this time. His head stayed up, his ears alert, like he was waiting for Liam to say something else. "Liam, we gotta go," Sarah's voice called from the hallway, breaking the spell. "Ava's got art class in 20 minutes. "Coming," Liam called back, but he didn't move right away. He looked at Rusty, his voice barely a whisper. "You're gonna be okay, you know that. I'll be back tomorrow." As he stood, Clara appeared at the gate, her arms crossed and a knowing smile on her face. "That's the first time I've seen him eat with someone in the room," she said. "You're getting through to him, Liam." Liam ducked his head, his ears burning, but inside he felt like he'd just found a treasure map. Rusty wasn't his dog, not yet, but every visit, every apple slice, every story was a step closer to something. He didn't know what, exactly, but he knew it mattered. In the car, Ava bombarded him with questions. Did he eat again? Did he wag his tail? Can I come next time? Liam answered patiently, his mind still in the kennel, replaying Rusty's cautious steps. He didn't know how long it would take, but he'd keep coming back day after day until Rusty was ready to trust him. Liam's sneakers squeaked on the kitchen linoleum as he paced, his hands twisting the hem of his t-shirt. It was supper time, the smell of roasted chicken and mashed potatoes filling the air, but Liam's appetite was nowhere to be found. His mind was still at the Blue Ridge Animal Shelter, replaying the moment Rusty had eaten the apple slice in front of him, those brown eyes flickering with something new. Not trust, not yet, but a spark of possibility. For 2 weeks, Liam had sat in that kennel, talking and waiting, and now that spark had lit a fire in him. He wanted to do more than visit Rusty. He wanted to bring him home. The idea had taken root that afternoon, when Clara had mentioned the shelter's limited space. "We can't keep every dog forever," she'd said, her voice heavy with unspoken meaning. Liam wasn't naive. He knew what happened to dogs like Rusty, labeled Unadoptable in red. The thought of Rusty running out of time made his stomach knot, like he'd swallowed a handful of gravel. He didn't know if he could fix Rusty, but he knew he couldn't walk away. Not now. At the table, Ava was chattering about her art class, waving a glitter-covered dragon drawing, while Sarah scooped potatoes onto plates. Mark, Liam's dad, was slicing the chicken, his glasses fogging slightly from the steam. Sonny, their golden retriever, lay under the table, tail thumping hopefully for dropped crumbs. Liam took a deep breath, his heart thudding. He'd been rehearsing his words all evening, but they felt jumbled now, like a puzzle he hadn't solved. "Mom, Dad," he started, his voice wobblier than he'd hoped. "I've been thinking about Rusty, the dog at the shelter." Sarah glanced up, setting the serving spoon down. "The scared one? You've been spending a lot of time with him." "Yeah," Liam said, his fingers tightening on his shirt. He's getting better. He ate an apple in front of me yesterday. Clara says that's a big deal, but..." He hesitated, the words catching in his throat. "The shelter's full. They might not keep him much longer." Ava's eyes widened, her fork frozen mid-air. "They're going to get rid of him? Like, forever?" "Not exactly," Sarah said quickly, shooting Ava a reassuring look. "Shelters try to find homes for every dog, but sometimes it's hard, especially for dogs with issues." Mark put down the carving knife, his brow furrowing. "What are you getting at, Liam?" Liam swallowed, his mouth dry. "I want to foster him, bring him here, just for a little while to see if he can get better. He doesn't need a lot, just a quiet place and someone to sit with him. I can do that." The kitchen went quiet, save for Sonny's soft huff as he shifted under the table. Ava's mouth dropped open, her glitter pen clattering onto her plate. Sarah and Mark exchanged a look, the kind that parents have when they're deciding whether to say yes or no without saying anything at all. Liam's heart sank. He knew that look. It was the same one they'd given when he'd asked for a skateboard last Christmas. Practical, cautious, full of reasons why not. "Liam," Mark said, his voice gentle but firm, "that's a big responsibility. Rusty's not like Sonny. Sonny was a happy pup from day one. This dog, he's got problems. Fearful dogs can be unpredictable. You sure you're ready for that?" "He's not unpredictable," Liam said, a little too quickly. "He's just scared. He doesn't bark or bite, he just needs time. I've been sitting with him every day and he's already eating in front of me. That's progress, right?" He looked at his mom, hoping for an ally. "Clara says I'm good with him." Sarah tilted her head, her expression softening. "You are good with him, Liam. I've seen how much you care, but fostering isn't just about sitting and talking. It's feeding, cleaning, training, dealing with accidents or behaviors we don't know about yet. And we've got Sonny to think about too." "Sonny would help," Liam said, his voice rising with hope. "He's so friendly. Maybe Rusty would learn from him, like how to play or relax. And I'd do the work, I'd feed him, walk him, clean up, I promise. Ava bounced in her seat, her dragon drawing forgotten. I want Rusty to come, I'll draw him pictures to make him happy, and I won't let him eat my glitter pens, I swear. Mark chuckled, but his eyes were still serious. Ava, it's not about glitter pens. It's about whether we can handle a dog who might not fit in here. Liam, what if Rusty doesn't get better? What if he's too scared to live with a family? Liam's throat tightened. He hadn't thought about that. Not really. He'd been so focused on Rusty's small steps forward that he hadn't considered failure. But then he pictured Rusty in the kennel, alone, his eyes dull and distant, and the gravel in his stomach turned to steel. He just needs a chance, he said, his voice steadier now. If we don't try, he won't get one. I don't want him to think nobody cares. Sarah reached across the table, squeezing Liam's hand. You've got a big heart, kiddo. I'm proud of you for wanting to help. But we need to be realistic. Let's talk to Clara, see what fostering would look like. Maybe we can try it for a few weeks, see how Rusty does. No promises, okay? Liam's heart leaped, a grin breaking across his face. Really? You mean it? No promises, Mark repeated, but there was a hint of a smile in his voice. We'll call the shelter tomorrow, get the details, and you're on poop scooping duty. Understood? Deal, Liam said, his voice bright with relief. Ava clapped, startling Sonny, who let out a happy bark. For the first time all evening, Liam felt hungry, grabbing his fork and digging into his potatoes. He could already see Rusty in their garage, curled on a soft blanket, maybe even sniffing Sonny's toys. It wouldn't be easy, but Liam didn't care. He'd sat with Rusty for 2 weeks, just to earn a glance. He could handle a few more challenges. That night, as Liam lay in bed, his adventure book open but unread, he whispered to the dark, "Hang on, Rusty, you're gonna have a home soon." He didn't know if Rusty could hear him, but he hoped somehow the puppy felt it. The following Friday, Liam's stomach fluttered with nervous excitement as the SUV bumped along Willow Creek Road toward the Blue Ridge Animal Shelter. Today was the day. Rusty was coming home. Not forever, not yet, but for a trial foster period that felt like a promise. Liam sat in the back seat, his hands clutching a new leash he'd picked out at the pet store, bright blue with little paw prints. Beside him, Ava was drawing a welcome sign for Rusty, complete with a glittery dragon and the words, "You're safe now." Liam hoped the words would feel true for the scared Labrador Retriever puppy. At the shelter, Clara met them with a clipboard and a warm smile. "You ready for this, Liam?" she asked, handing Sarah a stack of foster paperwork. "Rusty's a special case, but I've got a feeling you're the right kid for him." Liam nodded, his throat too tight to speak. He followed Clara to Rusty's kennel, where the puppy sat in his usual corner, his golden fur a little shinier thanks to recent meals, but his eyes still wary. The Unadoptable label on the door seemed to mock him, but Liam ignored it. Rusty wasn't unadoptable. He just needed a chance. Getting Rusty into the SUV was a challenge. He didn't fight the leash, but he froze at the kennel door, his legs stiff, like he wasn't sure the world outside was safe. Liam knelt beside him, speaking softly. "It's okay, Rusty. We're just going to my house. Sonny's there. He's nice." After a few minutes of coaxing, Clara gently lifted Rusty, his body tense but unresisting, and placed him in a crate in the back of the SUV. Liam sat beside it, whispering stories about pirates through the bars, hoping his voice would keep Rusty calm. At home, the family had prepared a space in the garage, a quiet corner with a soft blanket, a water bowl, and a stuffed toy Liam had borrowed from Sonny's collection. The garage was warm, insulated, and far enough from the house's bustle to feel safe. Sarah opened the crate door, but Rusty didn't move, his eyes darting from the concrete floor to the open space beyond. "Give him time," Mark said, resting, a hand on Liam's shoulder. "He's in a whole new world." Liam nodded, but the sight of Rusty's stillness stung. He'd imagined the puppy sniffing around, maybe wagging his tail like Sonny, but Rusty just curled tighter in the crate, his scarred leg tucked beneath him. Sonny, curious and eager, trotted into the garage, his golden tail swinging like a metronome. He sniffed the crate, letting out a friendly huff, but Rusty flinched, his ears flattening. "Easy, Sonny," Sarah said, guiding the retriever back. "Let's not overwhelm him." That first night, Liam couldn't sleep. He kept picturing Rusty alone in the garage, wondering if he was scared, if he regretted leaving the kennel. At midnight, he tiptoed downstairs, a flashlight in hand, and peeked into the garage. Rusty was still in the crate, eyes open, staring at the wall. Liam sat on the floor, a safe distance away, and whispered, "You're okay, Rusty. I'm right. Here." He stayed until his eyelids drooped, hoping his presence was enough. The next few days were harder than Liam expected. Rusty refused to leave the crate, even for food. Liam would set a bowl of kibble just outside, but Rusty only ate when no one was around. The bowl mysteriously empty by morning. Loud noises, a slamming door, Ava's laughter, the neighbor's lawnmower, made Rusty tremble, his body shrinking, into the crate's corner. Sonny tried to help, dropping a squeaky ball near the crate or lying nearby, but Rusty ignored him, his world a fortress of fear. Liam stuck to his routine, sitting in the garage each afternoon, reading aloud from the Secret of Skull Island or talking about his day. "We had gym today," he'd say, cross-legged on the concrete. "I'm terrible at dodgeball. Ava says I should pretend the ball's a dragon, but I still get hit." He'd leave an apple slice near the crate, hoping Rusty would take it. But the puppy never did while Liam was there. It was like the shelter all over again, except now Liam felt the weight of responsibility. What if his dad was right? What if Rusty was too scared to live with a family? By the fourth day, Liam's hope was fraying. He sat in the garage, his book unopened, staring at Rusty's unmoving form. "I thought you'd like it here," he said, his voice cracking. "I thought maybe you'd trust me by now." He didn't mean to sound upset, but the words spilled out raw and heavy. Sonny, sensing Liam's mood, padded over and rested his head on Liam's knee, his warmth a quiet comfort. Liam scratched Sonny's ears, but his eyes stayed on Rusty. Then something shifted, a soft shuffle barely audible. Liam looked up, his breath catching. Rusty's nose was poking out of the crate, sniffing the air. Slowly his head emerged, his eyes flicking to the apple slice Liam had left on the floor. Liam didn't move, didn't speak, his heart pounding like a drum. Rusty inched forward, his belly low, and took the apple in his mouth. He didn't retreat, this time. He sat just outside the crate, chewing, his gaze darting to Liam and then away. Liam's face broke into a grin, tears pricking his eyes. "Good boy, Rusty," he whispered, so soft it was almost a thought. Rusty's ears twitched, and for a split second, his tail gave the tiniest twitch. Not a wag, but a sign he was listening. It wasn't much, but to Liam, it was everything. He felt like he'd just climbed a mountain, the peak still far off, but closer than before. That night at dinner, Liam told his family, his voice bright with pride. "I came out. He ate the apple right there." Ava cheered, demanding to see Rusty, but Sarah reminded her to give him space. Mark nodded, a cautious smile tugging at his lips. "That's a start, Liam. Keep at it." As Liam lay in bed, Sonny, curled at his feet, he felt the balloon in his chest again, lighter now, floating higher. Rusty was still scared, still a mystery, but he'd taken a step, and Liam would be there for the next one, no matter how long it took. 2 weeks had passed since Rusty arrived at the Carter house, and Liam's days had settled into a quiet rhythm of school, homework, and time with the scared Labrador retriever, Puppy. The garage had become his sanctuary, a place where he could sit with Rusty and escape the noise of the world. Ava's chatter, his dad's news radio, the pressure to fit in at school. But progress with Rusty was slow, like trying to carve a path through stone with a spoon. The puppy had eaten the apple slice in front of Liam that one time, a moment Liam replayed in his mind like a favorite book passage. But since then, Rusty had retreated back into his crate, his eyes wary, his body tense. Liam refused to give up, though. He'd promised Rusty a chance, and he meant to keep it. Each afternoon, Liam would settle on the garage floor, his back against a stack of moving boxes, and read aloud from The Secret of Skull Island. The book was dog-eared now, its pages soft. From use, but Liam didn't mind. The story of pirates and hidden treasure felt like a bridge between him and Rusty, a way to fill the silence without demanding anything in return. He'd leave an apple slice or a cracker near the crate, talking about his day. How he'd tripped in gym class. How Ava had glued glitter to her math homework by accident. How Sunny had chased a butterfly and fallen into the creek. Rusty never reacted, but Liam noticed small signs. The puppy's ears tilting toward his voice, his breathing less shallow, his tail not quite so tightly tucked. Still, doubt crept in. Liam would lie awake at night, Sunny snoring softly at the foot of his bed, and wonder if he was doing enough. What if Rusty never left the crate? What if he was too broken to trust anyone? The Unadoptable label haunted him, a red shadow that lingered even in their garage. But every morning Liam would look at the blue leash hanging by the door and feel a spark of determination. Rusty had eaten that apple. He'd come out once. He could do it again. On a crisp Saturday morning, with the Virginia air smelling of pine and damp earth, Liam decided to try something new. He'd noticed Rusty watching Sunny through the garage window, his eyes following the golden retriever as he romped in the backyard, chasing leaves or digging pointless holes. Maybe Sunny could help, Liam thought. Maybe Rusty needed to see what being a dog could look like. After breakfast, Liam grabbed his book, an apple slice, and Sunny's favorite squeaky ball. He led Sunny into the garage, keeping the door to the backyard cracked open so Rusty could see the grass and sky. "Okay, Sunny," Liam whispered, scratching the retriever's ears. "Show him how it's done." Sunny wagged his tail, oblivious to the mission, and flopped onto the concrete with a happy huff, the squeaky ball between his paws. Liam sat near Rusty's crate, closer than usual but still leaving space, and opened his book. "Chapter 12, he said, his voice steady. The pirates found the cave, but the treasure was guarded by a giant squid. He glanced at Rusty, who was curled tightly, his scarred leg hidden. Liam kept reading, letting the words flow, but his eyes flicked to Sunny, who was now tossing the ball in the air and catching it with a gleeful chomp. Rusty's ears twitched. Liam kept his voice even, not reacting, but his heart sped up. He reached into his pocket, pulled out the apple slice, and placed it just outside the crate, closer than he'd dared before. "Sunny loves apples," he said casually, as if talking to the air. "Bet you'd like this one, Rusty. It's the sweet kind." Sunny, hearing his name, trotted over, sniffed the apple, and gave Liam a look that said, "Can I have it?" Liam shook his head, whispering, "Not yours, buddy." Sunny sighed dramatically and went back to his ball, squeaking it loudly. Liam read on, describing the squid's tentacles and the pirate's escape, but his attention was on Rusty. The puppy's nose twitched, his eyes darting to the apple, then to Sunny, then back to the apple. And then it happened. A soft shuffle, like a leaf skittering across the floor. Liam's breath caught, but he kept reading, his voice steady as a drumbeat. Rusty's head emerged from the crate, his body low, moving with the same cautious crawl Liam had seen at the shelter. He stopped at the apple, sniffed, and took it into his mouth. But instead of retreating, he stayed there, chewing, his eyes flicking to Liam. Liam's heart soared, but he didn't move, didn't stop reading. "The pirates sailed away," he said, his voice barely trembling, "with the treasure safe in." "So they're holed." Rusty finished the apple, his jaws working slowly, and then, Liam almost didn't believe it, his tail gave a single, hesitant wag. It was small, barely a flicker, but it was the first time Liam had seen Rusty move like a dog, not a shadow. Sunny, sensing the moment, dropped his ball and padded over, stopping a few feet from Rusty. The puppy froze, his ears flattening, but Sunny just lay down, chin on his paws, like he was saying, "I'm no threat." Rusty watched him, his body tense, then slowly relaxed, his ears lifting slightly. Liam kept reading, his voice a lifeline, until he reached the chapter's end. He closed the book, his hands shaking with quiet joy, and looked at Rusty. "Good boy," he whispered, so soft it was almost a thought. Rusty's eyes met his just for a second, before he shuffled back to the crate. But he didn't curl up tightly this time. He sat head up, watching Liam and Sunny like he was starting to see them, really see them. Liam wanted to cheer, to run inside and tell his family, but he stayed still, letting the moment settle. He felt like he'd just found a key to a locked door, one he'd been searching for since that first day in the shelter. Rusty wasn't fixed, not by a long shot, but he was here, he was trying, and Liam was part of it. When he finally went inside, Sonny bounding ahead, Liam's grin was unstoppable. He wagged his tail, he told Sarah, who was washing dishes, and he stayed out of the crate to eat. Ava squealed, demanding details, while Mark raised an eyebrow, impressed. "Keep it up, Liam," he said. "You're doing something special." That night Liam lay in bed, Sonny's warmth against his legs, and whispered to the ceiling, "We're getting there, Rusty. You and me." He didn't know how far they'd go, but for the first time he believed they could. Liam's sneakers tapped a nervous rhythm on the classroom floor as he waited for his turn to present. It was a Monday morning, and Mrs. Hargrove's fifth-grade class buzzed with anticipation for their change and growth projects. Posters lined the walls, showcasing everything from soccer skills to baking experiments, but Liam's project was different. His poster, propped against his desk, featured Rusty, the Labrador Retriever puppy who'd gone from a scared shadow in a shelter kennel to a dog who'd wagged his tail for the first time just days ago. Liam's heart raced, not because he was afraid to speak. He was used to being quiet, but because Rusty's story felt like his own and he wanted to get it right. The past few weeks had been a whirlwind. Rusty's small breakthroughs in the garage, eating in front of Liam, wagging his tail, watching Sonny play, had fueled Liam's determination. He'd spent hours each day with the puppy, reading, talking, or just sitting in companionable silence. Rusty still flinched at loud noises and rarely left his crate for long, but he was changing bit by bit, and Liam felt a quiet pride in being part of it. When Mrs. Hargrove announced the project, asking students to explore how something or someone had grown, Liam knew instantly what he'd choose. Rusty wasn't just a foster dog. He was proof that even the most broken things could start to heal. Liam had worked on the poster all weekend, with Ava's help. They'd spread out on the living room floor, surrounded by markers, glue sticks, and photos Sarah had printed from her phone. The poster was simple but heartfelt, a timeline of Rusty's journey, starting with a grainy shelter photo of him curled in his kennel, eyes dull, ribs stark. Next came a shot of him in the garage, sniffing an apple slice, followed by one of him sitting outside the crate, his tail mid-wag as Sonny lay nearby. Liam had written captions in careful block letters. Day 1, too scared to move. Week 2, first apple. Week 3, first tail wag. Ava had added glittery stars around the edges, insisting Rusty deserved sparkle power. Now, as a classmate finished her presentation about learning to ride a bike, Mrs. Hargrove called Liam's name. He stood, his hands clammy, and carried his poster to the front of the room. 20 pairs of eyes followed him, some curious, some bored. Liam cleared his throat, setting the poster on an easel, and glanced at the photo of Rusty's first tail wag. Dad gave him courage. "This is Rusty," he began, his voice soft but steady. "He's a Labrador Retriever puppy I'm fostering. When I met him at the Blue Ridge Animal Shelter, he was labeled Unadoptable because he was so scared. He wouldn't eat, wouldn't look at anyone, just sat in his kennel like he'd given up." Liam pointed to the first photo, his fingers brushing the image of Rusty's hollow eyes. They found him by a creek all alone with a scar on his leg. Nobody knew what happened to him, but he didn't trust people anymore. The room was quiet, the usual fidgeting stilled. Liam took a breath, his nerves easing as he continued. "I started sitting with him every day, just talking about dumb stuff, like school or my sister's dragon drawings. I'd leave him apple slices, and after 2 weeks, he finally took one while I was there." He moved to the next photo, Rusty's nose inches from the apple. That was a big deal. He was starting to believe I wouldn't hurt him. Liam's voice grew stronger, warmed by the memory of Rusty's progress. "When we brought him home, to foster, he was still scared. He stayed in his crate, wouldn't play, wouldn't even look at our dog, Sonny. But I kept sitting with him, reading books, and last week he came out and wagged his tail. Just once, but it was like he was saying he's not done yet." He pointed to the final photo, Rusty's tail a blur, Sonny's goofy grin in the background. "He's changing, and I think I'm changing too. I used to be really shy, but helping Rusty makes me feel like I can do something important." He paused, his cheeks flushing as he realized how much he'd said. The class was silent. but not the awkward kind. It was the kind where people were really listening. Mrs. Hargrove, standing by her desk, gave him an encouraging nod. A girl in the front row, Mia, raised her hand. "Does he still have that scar?" she asked. "Yeah," Liam said, smiling. "It's part of him, but it doesn't make him scary. He's just rusty." Another kid, Tyler, spoke up, his voice skeptical. "He doesn't look like he'd bite or anything. Why'd they call him unadoptable?" Liam thought for a moment, choosing his words. "Because he was too scared to show who he is. People want dogs who wag their tails right away, like Sunny. But Rusty needed someone to wait. I think lots of dogs are like that. They just need time." When Liam finished, the class clapped. Not the polite kind, but the real kind, with a few whistles from the back. Mrs. Hargrove stepped forward, her eyes bright. "That was wonderful, Liam. You've shown us how patience can make a difference. I'm proud of you." Liam ducked his head, his ears burning, but he couldn't stop smiling. As he carried his poster back to his desk, Mia leaned over, whispering, "Rusty's kinda cool now, not scary at all." Tyler nodded, adding, "You should bring him to school sometime." Liam just grinned, too happy to speak. That afternoon, when Liam sat in the garage with Rusty, he felt different, bolder, like he'd carried a piece of the puppy's courage back from school. He read aloud, his voice clearer, and when he left an apple slice, Rusty crept out to take it, his eyes lingering on Liam a little longer. "You're a star," Liam whispered, his heart full. "You just don't know it yet." The presentation had done more than earn Liam an A. It had shown him that Rusty's story wasn't just theirs. It was something he could share, something that could change how people saw dogs like him. And maybe, just maybe, it could change how Liam saw himself. Liam's school presentation about Rusty had lit a spark, not just in him but in the world around him. The days following his talk were filled with a quiet buzz. Classmates asking about the Labrador Retriever puppy during recess, Mrs. Hargrove mentioning his project to other teachers, even Ava proudly telling her art class about Liam's rescue. Dog? Liam felt a warmth he hadn't expected, like he'd stepped out of the shadows and into a circle of light. Rusty was still a work in progress, spending most of his time in the garage crate, but his small steps, eating regularly, wagging, his tail more often, sniffing Sunny's toys, felt like victories. And now it seemed others were starting to see Rusty's potential too. It started small. The Carters' next-door neighbor, Mrs. Ellis, a retired librarian with a yappy terrier named Muffin, waved at Liam one afternoon as he walked Sunny past her house. Rusty, on a short leash for his first tentative outing, trailed behind, his head low, but his ears alert. "Is that the shelter dog you talked about at school?" Mrs. Ellis called, leaning over her picket fence. "Mia's mom told me about your presentation. Sounds like you're doing something special." Liam paused, surprised. "Yeah, this is Rusty," he said, glancing at the puppy, who froze at the sound of Mrs. Ellis's voice. "He's still kind of scared, but he's getting better." Mrs. Ellis smiled, her eyes softening as she looked at Rusty's scarred leg and matted fur. "He's lucky to have you, Liam. Keep it up." She tossed a dog treat over the fence, which Sunny gobbled up, but Rusty just watched, his tail giving a single twitch. Liam's chest swelled. Mrs. Ellis had always been nervous around big dogs, and here she was, cheering for Rusty. Words spread like ripples in a pond. At the grocery store, a cashier who'd heard about Liam's project from a co-worker asked, "How's that puppy doing?" A boy from Ava's class, dropping off a playdate invitation, peeked into the garage and said, "Whoa, is that the unadoptable dog? He doesn't look so bad." Even Liam's uncle, Tom, who visited that weekend and usually steered clear of dogs after a bad childhood experience, watched Rusty from the doorway and said, "He's got a certain charm, doesn't he?" Before leaving, Tom slipped Liam a bag of dog treats, whispering, "For your project." Liam hadn't realized how much his presentation had reached beyond the classroom. It wasn't just about Rusty's story, it was about what Rusty represented. A chance for second chances, for patience, for seeing past labels. The attention made Liam shy but proud, like he was carrying Rusty's courage with him. At home, Rusty was making strides. He'd started venturing out of the crate more often, sniffing the garage floor, or lying near Sunny during Liam's reading sessions. He still flinched at sudden noises, a car backfiring, Ava's squeals, but he recovered faster, his eyes seeking Liam's for reassurance. Then came the call from Clara at the shelter. Liam was in the garage, reading The Secret of Skull Island to Rusty, when Sarah poked her head in, holding the cordless phone. "It's Clara," she said, her voice curious. "She wants to talk to you." Liam took the phone, his stomach fluttering. "Hi, Clara." "Hey, Liam," Clara's warm voice crackled through the receiver. "I heard about your school project from Mrs. Hargrove. You've got folks talking about Rusty all over town. We're hosting an adoption fair at the park next Saturday, and we'd love for you and Rusty to come, not to adopt him out, but as a success story. Show people what's possible with a dog like him." Liam's eyes widened, his gaze flicking to Rusty, who was chewing a toy Sonny had dropped near the crate. "You think he's ready for that? He's still kinda nervous." "We'll set up a quiet spot," Clara promised. "You can stay with him, and Sonny can come too. It might inspire someone to give another dog a chance. What do you say, Liam?" Hesitated, picturing the park crowded with people and dogs, the noise and chaos that could scare Rusty back into his shell. But then he remembered the apple slice, the tail wag, the way Rusty had started to trust him. "Okay," he said finally. "We'll try." The adoption fair was a sunny blur of wagging tails and laughter. The park was strung with banners, booths offering treats and leashes, and kennels filled with hopeful dogs. Liam's family arrived early, setting up a small canopy in a shady corner, away from the main bustle. Rusty, on his blue leash, pressed close to Liam's legs, his eyes wide but his tail not fully tucked. Sonny, ever the social butterfly, flopped onto a blanket, inviting belly rubs from passers-by. Liam sat cross-legged, a book in his lap, ready to read if Rusty needed calming. A family approached, a mom, a dad, and a girl about Ava's age, her braids bouncing as she pointed at Rusty. "Is that the dog from the school talk?" she asked, her voice bright. "My friend Mia said he was super scared, but now he's cool." Liam nodded, his cheeks warming. "Yeah, this is Rusty. He's still learning, but he's doing better." The mum knelt, keeping her distance. "We're thinking about adopting, but we're nervous about dogs with issues. Seeing Rusty makes me think maybe we could handle one." Liam's heart lifted. "He just needs someone to go slow," he said, echoing Clara's words. "Like, talk to him, sit with him. He's not mean, just careful." The girl tossed a treat toward Rusty, who sniffed it but didn't take it. Sonny, of course, swooped in, making everyone laugh. Rusty's ears flicked, and his tail gave a small wag, like he was joining the moment in his own way. The family stayed to chat, and by the end of the fair they'd filled out an application for a shy beagle mix. Clara, watching from the adoption booth, gave Liam a thumbs up. "You did that," she mouthed. As the carters packed up, Liam knelt beside Rusty, who was lying on the blanket, his eyes half closed. "You were awesome," he whispered, scratching the puppy's ears. Rusty leaned into his hand, just for a second, and Liam felt like he could fly. The community was starting to see Rusty not as a lost cause, but as a dog worth rooting for, and Liam was the one showing them how. The adoption fair had changed something in Liam. Walking home from the park that Saturday, with Rusty trotting cautiously beside him and Sonny bounding ahead, he felt a quiet strength, like he'd grown an inch taller without anyone noticing. The way people had looked at Rusty, not with pity but with hope, made Liam realize the Labrador Retriever puppy wasn't just his project anymore. Rusty's story was reaching others, showing them that even a dog labeled Unadoptable could find a place in the world. And Liam, the shy kid who'd once struggled to speak up, was the one telling that story. Back home, Rusty's progress continued, steady but slow. He no longer spent all day in his crate, often curling up on a blanket near the garage door where he could watch the backyard. He'd started following Sonny outside for short stretches, sniffing the grass or chasing a leaf before darting back to safety. Loud noises, a slammed car door, Ava's squeaky clarinet practice, still made him flinch, but he'd look to Liam for reassurance, his brown eyes searching for a signal that all was well. Liam was there every time, reading aloud or tossing treats, his patience a tether for Rusty's fragile trust. A month into the foster period, Clara called from the Blue Ridge Animal Shelter. Liam was in the garage, halfway through a chapter of The Secret of Skull Island, when Sarah handed him the phone. "It's about Rusty," she said, her tone neutral but her eyes curious. Liam's stomach tightened as he took the receiver. "Hi, Clara," he said, glancing at Rusty, who was gnawing a squeaky toy Sonny had abandoned. "Hey, Liam." Clara's voice was warm but businesslike. "I wanted to check in. Rusty's been with you a while now, and we need to talk about next steps. He's doing better than we ever expected, thanks to you. Are you folks thinking about keeping him, or should we start looking for another foster?" Liam froze, the question hitting him like a dodgeball to the chest. He hadn't thought much about the future, too focused on Rusty's daily milestones. His first tail wag, his first playbo with Sonny, the way he'd started sleeping with one paw outside the crate. But now, looking at Rusty sprawled on the blanket, his golden fur catching the afternoon light, Liam felt a pang of certainty. Rusty wasn't just a foster dog, he was home. I think he's already home," Liam said, his voice soft but firm. He looked at Sarah, who was leaning against the doorway, listening. "Can we adopt him, like for real?" Clara chuckled, a sound of relief. "I was hoping you'd say that. Let me talk to your parents and we'll get the paperwork started. You've done something amazing, Liam. Rusty's lucky to have you." Sarah took the phone, her smile growing as she spoke with Clara. Liam knelt beside Rusty, his heart pounding with a mix of joy and disbelief. "You hear that, buddy?" he whispered, scratching the puppy's ears. "You're staying." Rusty tilted his head, his tail giving a slow wag, like he understood. That evening, the Carters sat around the kitchen table, the adoption papers spread out among Ava's glittery drawings and Mark's coffee mug. Mark read the forms carefully, his glasses perched on his nose. "This is a big commitment," he said, looking at Liam. "Rusty's come a long way, but he's still got challenges. You ready to keep working with him?" "Absolutely," Liam said, his voice steady. "He's family now." Ava clapped, startling Sonny, who barked happily. "Rusty's our dog. Can I make him a collar with dragons on it?" Sarah laughed, signing the papers. "One step at a time, Ava. But yes, he's ours." She looked at Liam, her eyes shining. "You made this happen, kiddo. I'm so proud of you." The adoption was finalized the next week. Rusty's Unadoptable label officially erased. Liam taped the old kennel card to his bedroom wall, the red word crossed out with a marker, a reminder of how far they'd come. But Rusty's journey wasn't over. A new chapter was beginning, one that would take him beyond the Carter house and into the community. Clara had another idea. A few days after the adoption, she called again, this time with a proposal. "Liam, we've got a program at the library. Kids reading to dogs to build confidence. I think Rusty would be perfect for it. He's calm, he listens, and your patience. With him could be a model for the kids. Want to give it a try?" Liam hesitated, picturing Rusty's nervous flinches at loud sounds. But he also remembered the adoption fair, how Rusty had stayed steady in his quiet corner, wagging his tail for strangers. "I'll ask him," Liam said, half joking, and hung up. That afternoon he sat with Rusty in the garage, now more a dog den than a storage space with blankets and toys scattered around. "What do you think, Rusty?" he asked, tossing a treat the puppy caught midair. "Want to help kids read? You're pretty good at listening." Rusty's ears perked, his tail thumping softly. Liam took it as a yes. The first library session was nerve-wracking. The children's room was bright with colorful rugs and low tables, but it was filled with unfamiliar sounds, giggling kids, rustling pages, a librarian's loud whisper. Liam kept Rusty on a short leash, his therapy vest, a gift from Clara, snug around his chest. Sonny stayed home, his boisterous energy too much for the quiet setting. A small group of kids, ages 6 to 9, gathered in a circle, each clutching a picture book. Some were shy, stumbling over words, others were bold but easily distracted. Liam sat cross-legged, Rusty beside him, and spoke softly. "This is Rusty. He used to be really scared, but he's a great listener now. You can read to him and he won't judge if you mess up." A girl named Sophie, her braids tied with pink ribbons, went first, reading a book about a lost kitten. Rusty lay down, his chin on his paws, his eyes fixed on her. When she stumbled on adventure, he didn't flinch, just waited. Sophie giggled, tried again, and got it right. By the end of the hour, 3 kids had read to Rusty, their voices growing steadier with each page. A boy named Ethan, who'd barely spoken, whispered, "He's cool," and patted Rusty's head. Rusty's tail wagged and Liam's heart soared. He'd helped Rusty, and now Rusty was helping others. It felt like a chain of trust, linking them all. The library reading sessions had become a highlight of Liam's week, a chance to see Rusty shine in a way he'd never imagined. The Labrador Retriever puppy, once a trembling shadow in a shelter. Kennel now lay calmly on a colorful rug, his therapy vest snug, as kids stumbled through stories about talking animals and brave knights. Rusty's presence seemed to steady them, his quiet attention a balm for their nerves. Liam, too, felt steadier, his shyness melting away as he guided the kids, offering soft encouragement or a treat for Rusty to reward a finished page. The community's embrace of Rusty, neighbors waving, kids asking for him at school, made Liam feel like they were building something bigger than themselves, a ripple of kindness that started with a single apple slice. But one chilly November morning, as frost dusted the Virginia grass, an unexpected call shook Liam's world. He was in the kitchen, pouring kibble into Rusty's bowl while Sonny begged for scraps, when Sarah handed him the cordless phone. "It's Clara from the shelter," she said, her brow creased with curiosity. "She sounds serious." Liam's stomach twisted as he took the phone, his fingers cold against the plastic. "Hello?" "Liam, hi." Clara's voice was warm, but tinged with hesitation. "I've got something to tell you about Rusty, and it's a bit complicated. A man came by yesterday, says he might know Rusty from before he ended up at the shelter. He saw the adoption fair photos we posted online and recognized him. Same scar, same golden fur. He wants to meet you and Rusty to talk." Liam's knees felt wobbly, and he sank into a chair, the phone pressed tight to his ear. Rusty, who was sniffing his breakfast, looked up, his brown eyes steady. "What do you mean, know him?" Liam asked, his voice small. He abandoned him, didn't he?" Clara sighed, the sound crackling through the line. "That's what I thought too, Liam, but this guy, his name's Tom, was emotional. He had photos, old ones, of Rusty as a tiny pup, barely bigger than a loaf of bread with a little blue collar. He says Rusty was his dog, called him Buddy back then. I'm not saying you have to agree to anything, but maybe hear him out." Liam's throat tightened, a mix of anger and fear bubbling up. He looked at Rusty, now chewing kibble, his tail giving a soft wag. Rusty was his dog now, part of their family, part of Liam's heart. The idea of someone claiming him, someone who'd let him end up starving by a creek, felt like a betrayal. "What if he wants him back?" Liam whispered. "He knows Rusty's adopted," Clara said gently. "He's not asking for that. He just wants to see him, maybe explain what happened. You don't have to decide now. Talk to your parents, think it over. I'll set up a meeting at the park if you're okay with it. Neutral ground, no pressure." Liam hung up, his hands shaking. Sarah, who'd been listening, sat beside him, her hand on his shoulder. "You okay, kiddo?" "I don't know," Liam admitted, his eyes on Rusty. "He's ours now. Why should we let this guy see him?" Sarah nodded, her expression thoughtful. "Maybe it's not about letting him take Rusty. Maybe it's about understanding Rusty's story. You've always wanted to know where he came from, right?" Liam didn't answer, but her words lingered. That night, he sat in the garage with Rusty reading The Secret of Skull Island, but barely hearing the words. Rusty, sensing his mood, rested his chin on Liam's knee, a gesture that had become their quiet language. "You don't remember him, do you?" Liam whispered. Rusty's tail thumped once, and Liam felt a pang of protectiveness. He didn't want to share Rusty, but he couldn't shake the curiosity. What had happened to make Rusty so scared? After dinner, the Carters talked it over. Mark was cautious, warning that the meeting could be emotional, but Sarah argued it might bring closure for Liam and Rusty. Ava, scribbling a dragon, piped up, "If he's mean, Rusty can stay with us forever." Liam smiled despite himself. In the end, they agreed to meet Tom with Clara present at the park where the adoption fair had been. The meeting was set for a crisp Saturday morning. Liam arrived with Rusty on his blue leash, Sonny trotting alongside for moral support. Clara was there, standing by a picnic table next to a man in a worn jacket and work boots. Tom was in his 30s, with tired eyes and calloused hands, his face lined with something like regret. When he saw Rusty, he froze, his breath catching. "Buddy," he whispered, his voice breaking. Rusty didn't react, his body close to Liam's, his ears alert but his tail still. Liam's grip on the leash tightened, his heart pounding. Clara introduced them, her voice calm. "Tom, this is Liam, Rusty's adopter. Liam, Tom's got some things he'd like to share." Tom knelt, keeping his distance, and pulled a faded photo from his pocket. He handed it to Liam, a picture of a tiny Rusty, all ears and paws, wearing a blue collar, chewing a rope toy in a sunny yard. "That's him at 8 weeks, Tom said, his voice thick. "I found him in a box by the road, took him in. He was my shadow, followed me everywhere." "What happened?" Liam asked, his tone sharp but curious. "Why'd he end up by the creek?" Tom looked down, swallowing hard. 2 years ago, I lost my job, then my apartment. I was living out. Drove my truck trying to keep Buddy fed. I left him with a friend for a week, thought it'd be temporary while I got back on my feet. But when I came back, he was gone. My friend said he ran off, got spooked by fireworks. I looked for months, posters, shelters, everything. I thought he was gone for good." Liam studied the photo, then Rusty, who was sniffing the air, his eyes on Tom but not approaching. "He was starving when they found him," Liam said, his voice low. "He didn't trust anyone." Tom's face crumpled and he nodded. "I know. I failed him. I'm not here to take him back. I see he's got a good home now. I needed to know he was okay." Rusty took a slow step forward, his nose twitching, then stopped, looking back at Liam. Liam knelt, stroking his ears. "It's okay, Rusty," he said softly. Rusty sniffed Tom's outstretched hand, then backed away, pressing against Liam's leg. Tom smiled, tears in his eyes. "He's different now, but he's safe, that's enough." Liam felt a knot loosen in his chest. He was still protective, but Tom's story filled in pieces of Rusty's past, like finding a missing chapter. They agreed to meet again. Maybe a walk in the park, no pressure. As they parted, Tom handed Liam the photo. "Keep it," he said. "It's his." That night, Liam taped the photo next to Rusty's kennel card, a bridge between who Rusty had been and who he was becoming. Rusty curled up beside him, his warmth a quiet promise. They'd faced the past together, and they were stronger for it. The meeting with Tom had shifted something in Liam, like a puzzle piece clicking into place. Knowing Rusty's past, his life as Buddy, his loss, his survival, made the Labrador Retriever puppy's progress feel even more precious. Rusty was no longer just a foster dog, or even just the Carter's dog. He was a survivor, a quiet hero whose story was weaving its way into the community. As winter settled over Virginia, frosting the Blue Ridge Hills and turning the air sharp, Liam felt a growing sense of purpose. Rusty's journey wasn't just about healing himself, it was about helping others heal too. Rusty's role as a therapy dog at the library had blossomed. The reading sessions, once a nervous experiment, were now a weekly event, with a waiting list of kids eager to share their books with the gentle puppy. Rusty would lie on his colorful rug, therapy vest snug, his brown eyes fixed on each child as they read, his presence calming their stumbles and silences. Liam sat beside him, offering soft prompts or a treat when a story ended, but Rusty did most of the work. His stillness, a gift to kids who felt unsteady in their own worlds. Parents whispered to Liam afterward, saying things like, "My daughter never read out loud before," or "He smiled for the first time in weeks." Each comment was a pebble in Liam's heart, building a foundation of pride. But Rusty's impact reached beyond the library. The adoption fair had sparked a wave of interest in the Blue Ridge Animal Shelter, with families citing Rusty's story as their reason for adopting or fostering. Clara called one frosty morning, her voice bright with news. "Liam, we've had 6 adoptions this month, and 3 families mentioned you and Rusty. They saw him at the fair or heard about your school project. You're changing how people see our tough cases." Liam, bundled in a scarf and feeding Rusty a treat in the garage, felt his cheeks warm. "It's mostly Rusty," he said. "I just talk about him." Clara laughed. "Don't sell yourself. Short, you gave him a voice. Speaking of, we're starting a new outreach program, visits to the community center for kids who need a little extra support. Think Rusty's up for it?" Liam glanced at Rusty, who was nudging Sonny's squeaky ball, his tail wagging softly. The puppy still had his fears. Thunder sent him under the couch, and strangers too close made him tense, but he'd grown braver, leaning into Liam's hand or following Sonny into the yard without hesitation. "Yeah," Liam said. "He's ready." The community center visits were different from the library. The kids, aged 8 to 12, weren't just shy readers. Some had faced hard things: foster care, family troubles, or school struggles. The first session was in a small room with beanbags and a mural of stars. Liam sat cross-legged, Rusty beside him, and introduced him to the group. "This is Rusty. He used to be so scared he wouldn't even eat. But he learned to trust, and now he helps people feel better." A boy named Jamal, arms crossed, muttered, "He doesn't look special." Liam smiled, unfazed. "He's not. He's just Rusty. But sometimes that's enough." Over the weeks, Rusty worked his quiet magic. He'd lie near a girl who barely spoke, letting her stroke his fur until she whispered her first words. He'd nudge Jamal's hand, coaxing a reluctant grin. Liam started bringing a notebook, jotting down moments like Day 72. Rusty let Mia hug him, or Day 79, Jamal read a whole page. He called it his Rusty log, a record of healing, not just for the puppy, but for everyone he touched. The community's love for Rusty grew. At a winter festival, Liam and Rusty staffed a shelter booth, handing out flyers and treats. Families stopped to pet Rusty, some recognizing him from the fair or library. A woman adopted a shy hound, saying, "If Rusty can do it, so can she." Ava, now Rusty's biggest fan, made glittery Rusty Rock stickers, which kids plastered on their jackets. Even Tom, Rusty's former owner, visited once, bringing a chew toy and a quiet thank you. "You gave him a life I couldn't," he told Liam, his eyes misty. Liam's own growth was undeniable. The boy who'd once sat alone at lunch now spoke confidently, sharing Rusty's story at school assemblies or shelter events. Mrs. Hargrove pulled him aside one day, saying, "You've found your voice, Liam. Rusty helped, but it's yours." Liam ducked his head, but he knew she was right. Helping Rusty had taught him patience, but it had also shown him he could make a difference. The turning point came in early spring, when Clara invited Liam and Rusty to a regional shelter conference in Richmond. "We want you to speak," she said. "Tell Rusty's story, how a kid and a lost cause dog changed each other." Liam was nervous, picturing a room full of strangers, but he agreed, knowing Rusty would be by his side. The conference was a whirlwind of booths and barking dogs, but Liam's moment on stage felt like a quiet bubble. With Rusty lying calmly beside him, therapy vest gleaming, Liam told their story. From the shelter kennel to the library, from unadoptable to indispensable. He showed photos, read from his Rusty log, and ended with, "Rusty didn't need fixing. He needed someone to believe in him, and now he's helping others believe in themselves." The audience clapped, some standing, and a girl in the crowd asked to name her school's reading club Rusty's Readers. Liam said yes, his heart soaring. Back home, the ripples continued. The shelter launched a Rusty fund for fearful dogs, inspired by Liam's work. Kids at the community center started their own logs, writing about their feelings with Rusty as their muse. Ava's Rusty Rock stickers appeared on water bottles across town. Liam kept his log updated, taping new photos to his wall. Rusty, with a kid, Rusty in the snow, Rusty asleep with Sonny, their fur a golden tangle. One evening, as spring turned the hills green, Liam sat on the porch with Rusty and Sonny, the stars bright above. Rusty rested his head on Liam's knee, his scar a faint line in the moonlight. Liam traced it with a finger, whispering, "You were never unadoptable, Rusty. You just needed someone to stay." Rusty's tail thumped, a soft rhythm, and Liam felt the world expand. Rusty's legacy, their legacy, stretching far beyond their little town.